June 14th, Wednesday, June 14th, Committee of the Whole meeting. Our Mayor Ben is out of town today. My name is Scott Kwame, acting as your mayor today. I'm normally over there in Ward 2 next to Tom, but we'll take it from here today. Lynn, roll call, please.
Here.
Him.
Here.
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 Here. Here. Here.
Thank you. We've got a full agenda today. To start things off, we'll ask our city engineer, Brian, to bring before us City Project 5959.
Thank you, and good morning, Your Honor, and council members. Moore Engineering has substantially completed the project plans and specifications for public improvement 5959. That's a 2023 street and utility improvement project. This is a reconstruction of Stanton Avenue from Broadway to Union Avenue, and also the resurfacing of Oak Street from Stanton to Lincoln Avenue. On the projector is a title sheet of the project plans and specifications. We have not set the bid date for this project yet. Primarily, we're waiting for District 4 to grant approval for this project. Once we get that approval, we will be advertising for bids. And because this project is being special assessed for a portion of the street, we'll also be doing the 429 process and accepting bids, utilizing those bid numbers into the final assessment rules, holding a final assessment hearing prior to awarding the construction contract. With all this taken, we're anticipating substantial completion of the next year for this project. We will have interim completion dates and everything, but just in order to try to achieve the best bid prices, we're going to have substantial of next year. But however, there are going to be some key milestones if we do get good prices in a contract, such as some utilities to the adjacent the mill property. So, as presented at the preliminary hearing, this project is proposed to be funded by a combination of 429 bonds, municipal state aid street construction funds, sanitary sewer enterprise funds, water enterprise funds, and the stormwater enterprise fund. And if I could just go to the next sheet too, I just would like to point out the multi-use trail. Currently, right now, what's included in the project plans is constructing a 10-foot trail on the south side of Stanton from Vine to Union. I have an alternate alignment preliminary right now where we're trying to determine what that future is going to be. But in consideration of this project, that's the extent boxed in yellow included in this project. So at this time, I'm requesting to accept the project plans and specifications and a resolution authorizing the advertisement for bids for public improvement 5959.
Thank you, Brian. I'd like to entertain.
I'll offer that, Your Honor.
Thank you, Jim.
Second that, Your
from Tom Roofer, thank you. Any comments or discussion?
Brian, just to clarify, the trail is an alternate.
It's not going to be, it's just as shown right there, it's an alternate, but the trail, anything south on Vine and west is not included right now. It's to be determined at this
Right.
time. That just shows an example illustration
Okay.
of what possibly.
Any further questions? I think, Brian, I've got one. As we began talking about the Stanton project, my understanding was it would go all the way from Union to Broadway, and the yellow area here goes from Union to Vine. So am I misunderstanding it, or is this a different project or a portion of what we had originally started talking about?
No, the project limits haven't changed. This is the street and utility reconstruction of Stanton from Broadway to Union.
So the yellow box on there,
Oh,
That's just trail.
that just is referring to the trail, but not to the entire scope of the project. Okay,
Correct.
gotcha, thank you.
And Your Honor, you are correct. Originally, that trail was proposed to go from Union to Broadway on the frontage there, but we've had several conversations with landowners and neighbors in the area. And we're trying to accomplish this alternate route that Brian shows on here, which would be in everybody's best interest. So because we don't have that clearly defined today and have the easement secured, we've kind of decided that we'll get kind of the no one done, and then we'll have to figure the rest out. So.
Very good.
thank you.
With no further discussion, I'll call for the roll call. That's a motion, that's right. Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, Brian. And the next item is also for you, improvement
Yes.
number 5364.
Yes, thank you. City staff, we've substantially completed the project plans and specifications for the 2023 city street mill and overlay project. On the projection right there is a project title sheet right now. The current extent of this project is Park Street, Fur to Skogmo, Skogmo Boulevard from Park Street to Cleveland, Hillside Avenue from Park Street to East Termini, and then a small portion of Union Avenue, which is Union Avenue to Fur Avenue. That's just in front of the Casey's store up there on the north side of town. The estimated probable construction cost for this is $276,700. The report was publicly advertised for bids. I'm looking to set the bid schedule here actually this week here. If we receive favorable bid prices, we'll look to add additional street segments to this project. However, that's contingent on, like I said, what bid prices we will receive. The city, we budget $296,140 for this type of work. This includes a general engineering, construction contingencies. I may look to do a budget adjustment in the future to see if we can do more streets in this area, but that's yet to be determined. So at this time, I'm requesting to accept the project plans and specifications and authorization to advertise for bids for public improvement 5364, and I'll answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Brian. Can we have a motion on this item? Thank you, Brent. Second?
I'll second that, Your Honor.
Second. Thank you, Anthony. Any comments or discussion? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote on this motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
In this case and the other one, would we see both of those go to the consent agenda on Monday?
That'd be fine.
Ask that question. All right. Thank you. The third item on our agenda today is regarding bicycle lanes. I believe you're Mallory. I'd like Mallory to come and speak to us today on this topic.
Good morning, council members, Your Honor. To introduce myself, Mallory Jarvie. I am the chair for the city's Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission, so I am acting on their behalf. And we are asking for their authorization for the city to look at the feasibility of installing bike lanes on Union Avenue, starting at Lincoln all the way to Church. This discussion started with the hill. Bicyclists have a hard time surmounting the hill when you're going northbound. The bike lanes would stop once you hit level terrain. We have asked, Fergus Falls bicycle entity has asked in the past, in 2021, to ask for bicycle lanes along with other projects. We've done some background research. Also, there would be a loss of a couple parking spots on Union Avenue on the eastern side by Park Region, and in the board packet you can see that we did ask the CEO if it would impact their business. They said no, so we've already done that research ahead of time. We have done a mock-up of what the bike lanes would look like. It would look very similar to Cascade is now, so it wouldn't be anything new to the community. We're all pretty familiar with bike lanes. Yeah, also in the board packet, we put in maps from the past bicycle and pedestrian master plan showing Union as a main thoroughfare through town and as a primary target for new bicycle on-street infrastructure. I'll take any questions at this time.
Very good. Thank you, Mallory. We have a motion to
I got a couple
bring
questions.
this in?
Yeah.
Are you-
So they're probably not for you, they're more for Brian or Andrew. Is it not, is this going to slow that project up with the federal money? Because we're going to add these bike lanes? Is that something that I heard through the
Sorry,
conversation?
I should
Could
explain
you-
that.
okay.
So we are asking that the bike lanes be added in the striping budget. That will be decided this fall, so they'd be striped next summer. So would it not be included in the project this summer? That we just don't have the time for
We'd
that.
still add money to our the stripes again.
Yes, so it would be about $325 to be added to the striping budget, approximately.
Any further comment?
So would this pretty much prohibit parking on the east side of Union, then all the way from Park Region till they come to the bridge, essentially.
No, it would just be that first half block of along Union Avenue by Park Region. Because it narrows there with the turning lane, we would have to put the bike lane all the way almost to the curb, but then it would go back with the flow of traffic and there'd be parking available.
So would there'd be the parking lane, there'd be the curb, then a bike lane, and then parking? Or will it be parking and then a bike lane?
It'll be parking, bike lane, travel lane.
Right.
So just like Cascade. And there is a map in the board packet, and I also have a big one with me if you would like to look at that.
Lynn, is it possible to put the map up on the screen or no? No? Okay. I know that we've got it in the packet.
Okay.
I just, I just know that, Cascade doesn't get used hardly at all. I live on that thoroughfare now, and I just don't know how much more confusion we'll have with the Union 2 blocks, and is it really necessary to do it right now? Excuse me. So it's just kind of looking at the much confusion as I had with the Cascade project when it was done 4 or 5 years ago. And it's still being striped today. I'm not really in favor of putting it in right in the downtown area in the first place, I guess, is my question. Is it a necessary part of our trail?
That's a fair concern. I just think it would be a great time now because we already did the bike lanes south on Union. So we should further expand our bicycle network instead of just having sparse chunks throughout town. It'd be better just have like a thoroughfare, especially with the riverfront project. People want to be biking to the farmers market more, have more families downtown, trying to reinvigorate our local businesses.
Your Honor,
Tom?
I agree with Mallory. I think it's a fabulous idea. As a recovering cyclist, I haven't been in the saddle much lately, but I just think it would provide more direction for traffic and knowing that space is reserved for bikes, and having gone through that intersection many times, I would personally feel a lot more comfortable doing so. And like you said, especially with the bike lanes that are already going south, it would, with the improvements and revitalization of our downtown, we're hoping to see more and more of that kind of traffic and more people, looking to bring their bikes to town to come and explore. And this is just going to make that easier for them and safer.
And we're investing all this. Sorry, I'll let you go.
I mean, I'm in favor of bicycling and everything else. I mean, personally, I've not been shy about letting it known that the lanes we actually have downtown, I would like to see removed, just for the sheer fact it is so narrow. It's an accident waiting to happen in the downtown corridor on Lincoln. I mean, it is so tight right there. And when this side of the bridge, it's not so bad, but I drove Union Avenue on the north side of the bridge, this is where it would continue. And I just got a feeling if we put a bike lane in there, now we're pushing the cars closer together in the center of that lane. I mean, when you go south on Union and past Vernon, there's not much traffic down there. But you get the corridor up here, there is an awful lot of traffic up in there. I mean, personally, I'd rather see people drive their bikes up on the sidewalk, and the only place they're not allowed to do that is downtown. So it's just to the point as I'm not in favor of this area having the in there. It's just, I drove that the other night. I tried to get a hold of Brian this week, and we just weren't able to connect. But I drove this last night, and I just feel that it is too much traffic. It is too narrow to try to squeeze a bike lane in there.
Thank you, Brent. The question before us has not had a motion offered yet, as far as that goes. And I suspect that Tom would like to make that
I'd be
motion.
willing to do that, Your Honor.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a second, Anthony. Thank you. So with the motion and a second, I'll point out that the question being asked of us is to have staff evaluate the feasibility. So at this point, we're not necessarily approving or not the existence of these bike lanes, but asking staff to look into it further. And so would there be any further comment then on the motion as we have it?
I would just say that, there's people are going to ride their bikes there whether or not there are lanes. I mean, that's not going to change. And so I think if we can take steps to make that safer for them, And it'll remind people that they maybe do need to just slow down and use a little bit more care when driving through that area. And that's, an area that's heavily crossed by pedestrians, and, drivers already need to maintain that higher awareness. So I think this is only going to improve safety for the bikes that are going to be there either way.
Jim?
This is just to evaluate. You'll bring this back to us, right, Brian? Okay. So this is just an evaluation. We can vote it up or down when they bring it back.
Now, if you'd like to vote no and not even have the staff put any time into it, that's fine. If you'd like to vote for it and see this proceed to another step, that's fine. Al?
I mean, would there be a problem to just have it diverted on Lake Alice? It's not even a half a block away, really. I'm just speaking from experience, I guess. As a kid, I lived on North Union, or on North Cleveland. And when I went downtown, I'd like to go by the lake and cut down through that way, and then you could get downtown. It's just like a half a block from Union to Lake Alice on the west side of the lake. I don't know if that's an option or not, but because it is very narrow. It seems narrow over there, especially when the semis are flying through there. If I was a biker, I'd be intimidated by it, but
Yes, I definitely don't disagree being intimidated by it. That's kind of why we're asking for
Yeah.
bike lanes to add some further protection. The bike lanes would hit Church, where then you could go onto Lake Alice. I think the main concern is people take the shortest path possible whenever possible. So I don't foresee many people cutting through Lake Alice to the downtown and then cutting back across downtown to get to the Riverfront Pavilion. Or let's say they're trying to hit the new Glacial Edge Trail that we're building. They would want to just go straight down to Union to go to the trail.
thank you.
Are we ready to vote? All in favor of this motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
The motion fails. I think it was 2 to 5. Okay. Bicycles are still on the agenda today, and to speak to us about the Ferber Park mountain bike trail contract, our Public Works Director, Guy Taylor.
Thank you, Your Honor. We solicited 3 contractors known in the state that build bike trails, and we got a quote back from Trail Source, owned by Hunter Rust. He submitted a bid of $104,000 to do the work to expand the bike trails in the Ferber Park mountain bike trail system and to build a skills training area. So I'd just like to have a resolution passed to allow the mayor and the city administrator to sign the contract with Hunter Rust, and we'll get this constructed yet this season. The cost of the expansion is all covered by grant and the match from Pedal Fergus Falls for that match, so a total of $104,000.
Very good.
I'll offer that, Your Honor.
Thank you, Jim.
I'll second it.
Second,
I'll second.
Scott Rachels. Thank you, sir. Any comment on this topic?
I think it's fabulous. It's just one more thing that's going to give people a reason to come to town, and there aren't mountain bike parks of this size with these kinds of amenities, anywhere real close to here. So it's another great project for Fergus.
And the funding is a good, you got a grant and plus the forward or.
Pedal Fergus Falls.
Yeah, so that's a good thing, so let's move ahead with it, get it done.
I would have a question for you, Guy. As the grant was being pursued and the matching funds and all that, who actually made that application and went and found this matching money?
It was the Pedal Fergus Falls group, specifically Dave Sanderson.
Okay. I think that we can extend a great thank you to Dave and the Pedal Fergus Falls for the work that they've done to do this. $100,000 improvement to a city asset is nothing to ignore. I think that's very, very good. Any further comment on this motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. We'll now look to our head librarian, and excuse me, Gail Hedstrom to bring us an annual report from our library.
Thank you, Your Honor and council members. Thank you for allowing me to be here today. At least once a year, I like to check in and share some annual report data with you. And it might seem funny that it's June and I'm sharing this, but we actually submit that annual report in April to the state. Then that information is just kind of double checked for typos and potential errors. So what I've presented to you today is a graphic that I think has some kind of high-level talking points that are exciting to share. But if you'd like to see the entire annual report, it's more of a booklet, not quite as appealing. It's also available online. The Department of Library Services falls under the Minnesota Department of Education. Typing that in with the word library statistics will bring you to the past 8 years of library annual reports for all of the libraries in the state of Minnesota, which is very interesting, actually, especially if you'd like to compare libraries of similar sizes or different parts of the region. So I encourage you to look at that site if you're interested. So we have roughly 13,000 registered borrowers at our library. So those are people who hold library cards that were issued from the Fergus Falls Public Library. We have no boundaries on who can use the public library. So wherever you live, wherever you're from, we have reciprocal borrowing, which means we will issue you a card, and then that can be that courtesy can be extended to our patrons who maybe have a lake home somewhere else, which seems funny. Most people come here for their lake homes, but you can imagine that people have dual residencies or travel, maybe need to be in another community for medical treatment. So we see a lot of people who are visiting family or with family who are using the cancer center. And so we can provide those people cards while they're here without a fee. Last year, about 102,000 people visited the library. That's roughly 343 a day. We say about 300 to 500 people enter the library each day. And we have a little people counter. So that's how we know what that number is. When people come into the library, there's a little, it is actually physically recorded. We checked out more than 196,000 physical items. So that's a lot of circulation. When those items, they're checked out, they're checked in, they're shelved. The staff keeps very busy with just the circulation process. Over 593 programs were provided on-site, off-site. Some are self-guided. But over 15,000 people participated in library programs. And obviously, some of those are repeats. So if you're coming to story time every week, that's the same person. It's not necessarily 15,000 different people. We provide wireless access that you can actually reach from our parking lot. So if people need access outside of library hours, they can do that. Over 9,611 remote access sites were recorded. So that's impressive. I mean, I'm just going to segue a second that we check out hotspots too. And our hotspots, there's maybe 40 of them in Viking Library System. I can't tell you the exact number, but there's usually a waiting list that's well over 40 deep. So it just lets you know that there are still serious issues with broadband access for people throughout the region. And that can be a number of things. It can be that it's just physically not plowed to their community or their neighborhood. It can also be a cost barrier. So we're helping to bridge that gap because we recognize how important that is. I'm going to touch on our volunteer hours. So we have a really robust volunteer program, along with an incredible staff. And if you know the people who work at the Fergus Falls Public Library, I would say they are probably some of the best librarians you will find, and consummate professionals who really know what they're doing. We also rely on a number of volunteers. Over 15 volunteers are scheduled at the library each week for set times and days. So it means a great deal to us. We couldn't get it done without them. So if you have questions about the annual report or any of these numbers, please ask. You can stop by anytime. And then I just want to mention that legislatively, libraries like cities had a really successful year. And things that will really impact us positively are changes to the system and level of funding for regional library systems, of which we are a part of Viking Library System. And there's been an increase for multi-type library systems, which also supplies support for us. So we are part of Northern Lights Library Network. So as a multi-type, they work with public libraries, private libraries, academic libraries, school libraries, so a little more robust in who they're serving. And school library media centers are going to receive an increase in funding and more defined definition of what that entails and who needs to be working in those spaces. And I'm very excited about that because there was a time in the state of Minnesota when librarians had to be working in media centers, and that went away as a cost-saving measure for some districts. But that's going to come back, and I'm just going to promote the idea that it's a great time to become a librarian in the state of Minnesota. If anybody's interested in that for their future. And then, of course, legacy funds, arts, cultural, and heritage funds that we voted on maybe 15 years ago in the state of Minnesota and passed, continue to provide us access to speakers, authors, performers who can come to the library. We usually write grants to make that happen, and libraries received an increase in that funding this year too. So we'll have more funding available. And just to let you know, so for instance, we are bringing J. Ryan Stradle to the library in July, and this is going to be sponsored in part by legacy funds. So, we'll receive a $2,000 grant that helps bring this presenter to the library in our community. So those funds mean a great deal to us. And of course, summer reading started, and the first day we registered over 700 people for the summer reading program. And when I left yesterday, I think we had about 1,200 people registered. So if you haven't done that yet, please do. Any questions from anyone?
Any questions for Gail? Tom?
I would just thank you for all of your hard work and tell you congratulations on the success.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I've got a question, Scott.
Gail?
Since obviously the new park opposite, I mean, there's like the traffic on the other side now is like tremendous. I mean, that park is used almost 24/7. Has that helped? I mean, has that brought even more people to the library?
Yes, it certainly has. So, and interesting you should say that it's used almost 24/7 because I drove into the library parking lot at 6 a.m. and there was 2 people in the park.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's amazing how it's used.
Avoid the crowds. Yeah, it really is, and I think it's a wonderful amenity. That park is just superb, and I do think we are a feeder for each other. So we're seeing people who've maybe they've never been to the library, but now they're at that park and their children need to use a restroom or they just need to come and cool off. So it's a great time for them to come and explore the library. So it's working really well both ways.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like good synergy. So
It is, yeah. Thank you.
thank you.
I've got a question for you, Gail. On the report, you noted over 1,700 volunteer hours that were part of the activity at the library. If somebody wanted to be a volunteer at the library, what kinds of things might they do as a volunteer? And what kind of demand might that be? How many hours a week or a month or whatever? How do you approach that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So with our volunteers, they fill out some paperwork kind of indicating, what their skills are, why they might want to volunteer at the library. And then they also do need to have a background check performed. Usually we suggest that a 2-hour shift is adequate for a volunteer, and maybe once or twice a week, depending on their schedule. They may do things like cleaning DVDs, repairing books, cleaning books when they come in, shelving things, organizing things on shelving carts. Sometimes we have a special process of maybe putting new spine labels on books. So it can really vary. Covering books with laminate is something that happens a lot that we can use help with. So it's really a variety of tasks that we need performed. Yeah. And I would just mention, since we're talking about volunteers in summer, we like to really work with Productive Alternatives and Rural Minnesota SEP. And I'm really excited that this summer we will have 2 employees from Productive Alternatives and a Rural Minnesota SEP employee too. So we really like to work with those different organizations in our community.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Appreciate that update today. The last item on our agenda today is the continuation of a discussion, essentially, that began last week at our council meeting. Claire Beck brought to us the request for a conditional use permit for Sugar High. If you would like to introduce the topic again, Clara, then I think what we'll do is see if members of the council each would like to make the comment or introduce while they're approaching this. And then I know the owner of the business, Emily, is here today, and we'll invite her to come and speak to us. And then following that, we will see where we go as far as any further discussion or motions on this topic. So Clara, if you can Give us a little
Thank you,
update then.
Scott. Yes, good morning, council. What a great day to talk about a conditional use permit, right? I'm just going to give a little update to remind us where we were and where we are this morning. At the last council meeting, you voted to extend a 60-day period beyond June 24th. And I do just want to make a slight amendment to my memo. The date that I had in my memo was September 16th. That is 60 weekdays after June 24th. And in fact, it is August 23rd that would be the official date that your 60 days would be up. I trusted Google like I trust it with my soul and didn't fact check that. So make sure you're checking your sources, everyone. But what we did on Monday was extend that 60 days. We still need to make a decision about this conditional use permit. And I did lay out in your memo some options for you moving forward that you can then discuss. So as you recall, the conditional use permit went through the Planning Commission. They had held the public hearing, had no comments from the public that came in, had no concerns, placed no conditions, and passed it on to you, the City Council, for discussion. So with a conditional use permit, that's a land use, that's an allowable land use within our city code. It just means that it goes through a little extra process to allow the members of Planning Commission and the members of council to place conditions if they would like on it, to make it more allowable in the zone in which it is being placed. So there are some rules surrounding conditional use permits. Again, must be decided within 60 days. If a decision is not reached within those 60 days, it is an automatic approval of that conditional use. The other options that exist are to deny a conditional use. You must have reasons for denial when you are denying it in writing that can then be agreed to by the council. You can also approve a conditional use with conditions, approve it without conditions, simply as is, which is what the Planning Commission has passed along to you. Or you can negotiate additional extensions to the 60 days with the applicant. Since you've already extended beyond that first 60 days, you do not have the option to extend again. You would have to enter into negotiations with the applicant at that point, should you want to extend this further. So those are the options that you have in front of you today. Please let me know if you have any questions about conditional use permits, about this one specifically. But otherwise, that is the information for you.
Your Honor.
Thank you, Clara. Okay, we'll just go around the room, I guess. Tom?
I would make a motion to approve the CUP without conditions.
I would second that.
And,
Okay,
Your Honor, I would
excuse
I
me.
would recommend if you would change the motion to move that to the city council for that action, because we don't
that's-
intend to
yeah.
take final action today.
Sometimes I forget where we are.
Yeah.
I will amend the motion accordingly.
So Tom's motion is to bring to the council the recommendation to pass without conditions.
I
And we
will
have a
still second.
second from Jim. Okay, so let's hear from those. The conversation was kind of rolling in many directions on Monday last week.
Would it
And
be
we ended up
possible-
having to go to an extension just to give us some time now to visit and to understand it a little further. So let's take some time to do that.
Would it be possible just to clarify the last sentence on the memo? If the council does not want to consider such requests in the future, council should review and amend Chapter 154.038B3 General Business District. Can you explain what?
So
Yes.
Just got
I
staff
think
kind
that's-
of give some
that's a
more
question
color to that.
Clara then, that particular piece of the code.
Yeah.
Yes, so this conditional use is based on 154.038 that allows for this conditional use specifically in a B3 zone. So if you do not want to consider allowing hemp manufacturing in a B3 zone, you would need to go back and amend that code. And so that change took place in, I believe it was November when, November of 2022 was when that was adopted by the council, that code language.
Sure. Further comments from other members of the council?
I'll jump in.
Go ahead, Scott.
But the reason my question is, I don't understand how you can manufacture hemp in a restaurant, and that's my question: is how is the county inspectors go with that? That's a big thing for me, I guess. I don't.
Sure, and maybe I should clarify, there are two kitchens.
Yeah,
in
I
that
know, and I know
building.
that,
Yep,
but it's
this
in the
is
same
back
building. It's in the
kitchen.
same building.
Yep.
Yeah.
And hemp manufacturing does not require licensure.
Okay.
Or you might say it doesn't require licensure at this time.
Yes.
Something that I guess that we're aware of is that the rules on this are basically going to change in about 18 months as the state takes over this whole topic. Is that accurate?
So,
What-
But as the rules stand now,
well, okay,
it
as
is
the rules,
not
so
required.
if we grant this in 18 months, is she going to be grandfathered in, or whoever owns it will be grandfathered in then, or will they have to become a licensed?
That's a good question. I would say that we would likely, at a certain point, require a license. So the way that we do our licensing currently for sales is that it's an annual license that you
Okay.
get. So I would expect there would be, based on timing, probably be some period of time where it is allowed as a continuation of what was allowed, and then we would have an annual permitting process that would
Okay.
come into play.
Thank you.
Clara, can you talk about the lifespan of a conditional use permit? I think that's really
Yeah.
important to touch on too.
Yep, so the lifespan of a conditional use permit, it runs in perpetuity with the parcel that it is attached to.
You said to the person it's attached to? Or the-
It is not,
To the person or the business?
it's the building. It's because it's a land use, it's literally like the building that it's attached to.
I suppose I can ask some questions. How does this work? You have to be 21 years of age to go into the Sugar High store or Elevate store. How does that impact this facility? Because obviously there are two family restaurants attached to this, where obviously there are a lot of minors go in, and how do we safeguard the minors in the community in this situation when you've got I understand obviously, yes, there's two kitchens, blah blah blah, but there's multiple entrances into these facilities. They're interconnected even through the market. There's a door going from the market into where this kitchen area is. There's obviously from Toast, there's from Union. I think we need a better clarification on how we're going to control entry, and I think we also need a kind of how we're going to cross-contamination is potentially there. I know we can say we're going to clean, et cetera, but I think I in my business I know what cross-contamination is and can happen even though we do our best to clean. And I think that we need to kind of just understand, I think, better how all the pieces of this are going to kind of keep the community, particularly the miners, safe.
These are procedural questions that I think maybe we can let that applicant
Yeah.
answer when she comes up. But from the application itself, at least in regards to the access by people who may be under 21, in her application, the business owner states that she will be only operating outside of the regular business hours of the businesses that are attached to 116 South Union.
And then my other question was that on food labeling, and now, where there is the potential of cross-contamination, Terroir chocolates, on theirs, they say, made in a facility that uses milk. If you pick up a lot of other chocolate candy bars, they'll say, made in a facility that has nuts for people with nut allergies. And I wonder how is Toast, Penny Cakes, Union going to be impacted by this? Because they're going to be manufacturing things in the same facility. So are we going to impose rules on them as to how we keep everybody safe?
Clara, could I make a comment, I guess?
Yeah, go ahead.
First of all, Anthony, the question in this case is really specific to the CUP, but I understand the direction you're going. And if we as a council want to include any conditions, we have that opportunity at this point to add conditions to the CUP, whether it be labeling, whether it be access, as you described earlier, as to, the age limits and whatnot to the space. So we would have the opportunity to add any number of conditions in any way that we would like to this specific CUP. If we wanted to go beyond that to the area of labeling in a more general sense, then it's into things like licensing and signage and all of that would apply in any business or any place, not necessarily this. That discussion really would have to go back to the staff for research and come back to us, as a way to address it in our code for how these businesses would be able to operate, whether it's a zoning question in this particular business district or elsewhere. So as much as those things are important, and we probably should still talk about them, they won't necessarily be a piece of this motion and this action. Brent, I believe you wanted to make a comment.
Yeah, I mean, what he brings up, I agree with, and Al brought up something earlier too about the allergies. I mean, if this stuff is going to be processed in a restaurant where people bring their families or residents, I think it should literally be clearly posted on the front door what is being manufactured and processed in this facility, so that family can make a decision on whether or not, no, I don't want to take no chances, I don't want to eat in here. And, that deals with the cross-contamination and everything else. I think this is something I think we need to talk about more, and then, like I said, have the staff look up anything more that we need to know, because like I said, I think the laws on this particular law that's coming up, I think things are going to change because there's going to be more than this city complaining about what we can and cannot regulate. And so I think this needs to be discussed a little bit further.
Al, after you comment, then I think we'll ask Anne Marie to come up and tell us what she's thinking. So go
Thank
ahead.
you. Like they say, looking back at some of the things that had been done in the past with the ordinance back in November, back then I know there was discussions with the city and with the county, and the county had their moratorium on this. And the city, decided to go through with this ordinance. As I talked to somebody from the Planning Commission the last time, it was that Monday of the council meeting, as he told me, as it was written, really they had no where to go except to say yes to it, the way the ordinance was written from what I was, what he told
Can you
me.
explain that a little bit further?
It's actually the, Mr. Kunde from the Planning Commission is who I spoke to, and he said the way it was written is what he told me, was that they needed to they had to approve it because there wasn't anything that they could do the way it was worded. They couldn't,
don't understand.
he couldn't have said no to it.
How could he not have said no?
That's because they were not in violation or anything the way the ordinance was written.
Oh, the CUP in
Yeah, the
particular.
CUP,
I'm
yeah.
I thought
Sorry
you
about
meant
that.
the
Yeah.
actual ordinance
Right, yeah.
language, which
So they couldn't
always
say
have
no
a
to
choice
that. So but it had to do with what the ordinance was in the CUP, and he said that's what they agreed to. Then as I spoke to somebody with public health that same day, at Otter Tail County Public Health, that person, that's why they didn't want to jump into this, because there were so many unknowns and so many things that could happen, and they didn't know what to do. I look back at it, and as I mentioned, I believe on last Monday, or a week ago Monday, was that when we talked about different with locations, I didn't like the term shared. I guess I have no problem with this if it's in a whole separate kitchen someplace. But it just puts in these other issues. I'm 100% for business. Don't get me wrong there. I'm going to tell you that right now. I want business. But with wanting business, you have to be a little careful too, just due to the fact that now there's Union, the new eatery there, Toast, Sugar High, and maybe, what else? Was there anything else there? What I'm missing?
Penny cakes.
Penny Cakes, yeah. So you've got 4 businesses there, okay? Let's say if something goes horribly wrong, and then there's liabilities. That person is gonna go after all 4 of those businesses, not just one. And it could be a complete nightmare legality wise. So those are things that go through my mind. Cross-contamination is, it happens. I know it happens. And it's just the way it is, as Anthony mentioned, even in his business. So I guess that my concern is the term shared. Even if there's conditions, like if it's listed that there's hemp products produced here or made here, yeah, you can do that, but I think it needs to ultimately be their own kitchen someplace. Thank you.
And that is allowable under code. So just to clarify, we're going through this conditional use permit process because that is required of our code within a B3 zone. It is allowable without conditional use permitting in any industrial zone. The manufacturing. So.
Your Honor, if I may.
I'd like to give Emily a chance to visit with us, so if you could keep it real brief.
I will do my best. Just back to the entire issue of cross-contamination. I have issues with that argument. What Councilmember Hicks mentioned, terroir chocolate, and I don't, somebody please correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe that terroir makes CBD chocolates, which is derived from the hemp plant. So there's that. And then also, talking about cross-contamination, like many people, I don't drink, I don't use alcohol. So if I go to a restaurant that makes tiramisu with rum in it, or uses a wine in their sauces, should we also be requiring those restaurants to post that alcohol is used in the preparation of their food? I mean, where do we draw the line with this? And then I would also be interested to hear, what is the measured amount of cross-contamination that presents a threat? Do we know that? I mean, I would be under the impression that you'd have to have some pretty significant cross-contamination for anyone to notice any kind of effects or be affected by anything that might be produced in that kitchen. So I'll let Emily.
Emily, please come up and
we'll go from there.
have a word with us today.
Thank you. Do I have to state my name and address?
Well, if you just give us your name and that you're a resident of the city.
Yes, I'm Emily
McHugh,
McHugh, and I own Sugar High Cannabis Consulting and Dispensary, and I'm a resident of Fergus Falls. And thank you for allowing me to show up here and advocate for myself. I always appreciate that platform, and I try really hard to not have my passion come across as aggression. So I want to start. I'm going to address the things that you all brought up, but I want to start by just kind of just informing you that. I do sit on the board of directors for the Minnesota Cannabis Association. I chair the retail committee, and that gives me access to legal counsel, including cannabis-specific legal counsel, in addition to my local legal counsel. And so I've taken some time over the last week to form some thoughts and talking points that I wanted to make sure I brought to your attention prior to any decisions being made. So this might be kind of all over the place, but it's everything that I want to get off my chest, okay? And my concerns and issues I have with the events that transpired at last Monday's council meeting. So state statute provides that the failure of a motion to approve an application constitutes a denial. And I just want to be clear about that because we are talking about a denial here and not simply an extension, okay? The Handbook of Minnesota Cities, put together by the League of Minnesota Cities, Chapter 13 speaks to guidance and procedures for granting an extension on a CUP application and states explicitly that if any agency or a city denies a land use request, it must give written reasons for its denial at the time it denies the request. While I did receive electronic and written notice within 48 hours of council's decision at last Monday's meeting to impose a 60-day extension of my application, the reasons given were not legal reasons as required, nor were they allowable or relevant to where my application was in the legal process at that time. The reasons I was given in my notice were that, quote, the laws on which the application depends are complex. Side note, they aren't. They're clearly laid out for us in the city code. We're talking about hemp processing and manufacturing here, not marijuana or any future regulatory framework pertaining to marijuana or the HF 100 bill. That will be a state regulated situation, not city at all. And the other reason is that the request involves a matter of public concern. So there's already been a public forum on this matter, as well as a public posting of my intent. Neither of these garnered zero feedback from neither community nor city officials during the appropriate time frame. It was also stated in my notice that additional study and input from the public is appropriate. Okay, that's an opinion and holds no legal base for decision-making when it comes to my application. This is not the legal process here. That window has already been legally closed for this matter, and I think it's important to not forget that. State statute also states that it is generally arbitrary and unlawful to deny a permit for a permitted use unless the zoning of the property is subsequently changed to prohibit that use. I've heard a lot of murmurs that are going in that direction. If that's the direction council wants to go, due diligence and legal procedures are required, and that would bear zero significance on my particular CUP application at this time. Conditional uses are those activities that the zoning ordinance permits if certain conditions set forth in the city ordinance are met. The city must grant the conditional use permit if the applicant satisfies all of those conditions. I satisfied all of those conditions. And there is no evidence on the record or otherwise that I have not met those conditions. Before I continue to the last couple points here, I did want to share an email that I received from a member of the Planning Commission. He shared with me, quote, "I had an inquiry from a council member about what the Planning Commission had discussed prior to approving the CUP before last Monday's meeting. And I informed them that most of the discussion was already had when the city took action to update the zoning and requirements to align and allow businesses such as yours to operate within compliance with state regulation, and that there were no legitimate means to deny the application. Personally, this is his quote again, still. Personally, I do believe that the actions of some council members were discriminatory against your business, and I don't believe it's government's position to be picking winners or losers and infringing on the rights of a legal business to engage in whatever legal practices it desires, as long as it is within the conditions established, zoning, regulations, etc." End email. So the city already has amended city code to allow hemp processing or manufacturing as a permitted conditional use in a B3 general business district, as Clara reminded us. It is not enough to boast the claim that hemp manufacturing or processing is detrimental to public health. That debate has already passed, and that is not the issue for today. The city has already determined that hemp processing or manufacturing in a general business district is a permitted conditional use. If amending our current ordinance is the desire of our current council, again, that's not the issue for today, and further legal process would be required. Furthermore, as exhibited at last Monday's council meeting, it's unclear by most of the panel, or it was, whether the city is even acting within its authority by granting an extension for this permit. While Minnesota law does allow the city to grant an extension following certain statutory guidelines, the reasons in this written notification that I received are, in general, are required to be specific and inform the individual applicant why the process is being delayed. Courts have held that simply needing more time may not be an adequate or legal reason. I believe that what the city is attempting here is outside of what it legally has the right to do, as well as feeling highly discriminated against my business and the cannabis industry on a local level overall. I believe this is the epitome of unnecessary regression, especially in the face of nothing but progression and regulatory framework and procedures and protections for those in the industry. And for that reason, I would like to go on record formally at this time withdrawing my conditional use application to expand my business into manufacturing of hemp edible cannabinoid products at 116 South Union Avenue, as I have found an alternate location to do so in an industrial zone that doesn't require a conditional use permit at all. I actually don't really want to address the cross-contamination right now because that's not a thing. So I would invite you to please reach out to me directly at my work email. My information is very accessible and transparent. Again, I sit on the board of directors for the Minnesota Cannabis Association and pretty much know more than anyone in town about the regulations, including those of the future. And again, thank you for hearing me. Thank you for the most part for welcoming me with open arms in the community. This has been highly frustrating for me as I'm only trying to expand my business and generate even more revenue for this community that we already are. But like I said again, I would like to officially withdraw my application, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Emily. In light of the fact that she's announced her intentions to withdraw the application, Tom, would you like to retract your motion?
I will do so, Your Honor.
Jim?
Same.
Okay. There were many questions raised and some good discussion on this. It looks like we'll very likely be coming back to discuss some of the issues around this, whether it be things like labeling, signage, and code enforcement and other things that we were kind of touching on, but never really having to make any decisions about. And now we don't have to make a decision. Is there any other business that needs to come before the committee of the whole this morning?
I think with that, then, Your Honor, we should probably put on the agenda at some point, then the city should review its chapter 154.038, so that we don't have this situation again going forward.
Are you asking that we bring that to the council as a motion to ask the staff to do that review?
I would,
So that's a motion?
yeah, it would be a motion in that
I'll
case.
second
Do
that.
we have a second for that?
I'll second that.
Laura, thank you for the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries.
Your Honor, can we just is the intent to have that discussion on Tuesday at the council meeting or the next committee of the whole? Or I just want to make sure that.
It can
As I
be the next
understand
committee
it,
of the
it would
whole.
just-
Next
yeah,
committee.
Yep.
It would just be to get it on your list of things to do.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Yeah, very good.
I would, Your Honor, if I may just make a comment
Sure.
about that. I think unfortunately, any other business person that wants to pursue a similar project is probably going to be pretty discouraged after, seeing what, the outcome of this event. So I don't think we'll have to worry about it too much.
Your Honor, I'll argue that, because my biggest concern, and I think most of our biggest concern, is those being operated in a restaurant as a second business. I have no problem with any other, if she had her own building, that's great. Can't stop, we won't stop it anyway. It's the location where it was with family restaurants. That's, I think, I'm not speaking for everybody, but that was my huge thing. So, and nobody seemed to want to touch it. Nobody wanted to talk about it. The county said, no, we don't have nothing to do with it. That's where my problem was, nothing else.
There were a couple of pieces of the conversation that really never came up, too, and that would be, how would our city even enforce the code that we've got? She was intending to work after hours. We don't normally have enforcement inspectors going around at 11 o'clock at night. There were some things about this that were going to be difficult for the city to deal with no matter what. And so we've certainly got some issues that need to be talked about. I think that, as Anthony said, to bring this for review further is important. To clarify for those who may have wondered what just happened, the reality is that in an industrial zone, this is permitted without any additional CUP or anything like that. And so she's found a location where she can do this that meets all of the requirements without any additional permitting, and off she goes. Had she chosen to do this in her own facility downtown, it would have still been in a business district, and if she wanted to build out a kitchen there, she would have needed to go through this same CUP process, whether it was in her building or the shared kitchen or whatever, because of the zoning. So what it falls under is the umbrella of zoning. And we may have some things to talk about for zoning. We may have some things to talk about for things like signage and labeling and all that. And because the city is under the state and the state hasn't given us any direction, we're kind of on our own to make this stuff up as we want to. And the fact that some of this stuff just doesn't exist yet doesn't mean that we can't put it in place.
Well, she
And so
brought
we
up-
may need to do that.
She brought up one point, is talking about how, it's just such a minute amount and it's not a problem. My wife is gluten-free. There are some women or people who are gluten-free by choice. I mean, if they accidentally lay the toast on top of her bread, on top of her food, and one or two crumbs get onto her food, she literally will get sick. So everybody can have their own opinions on what is enough and not enough to make you sick. It just doesn't take much. It can just take the minute amount, and that's in my wife's case. So we don't know, even on hemp, if there is somebody who is allergic or is not, or some people who are just opposed to it. It's just the idea that I believe people have a right to know what's being manufactured inside a facility in an area where it's not supposed to be.
I don't think the city of Fergus Falls intended to become the pioneers in this. And yet, we're kind of in that place to a degree today. And going forward, because we didn't sign on to the moratorium with the county, we're kind of at this place where we got to make up our own rules if we want rules. And that's kind of the direction that's going to go for us. By way of announcements, next Monday is a holiday, and so most city offices will be closed. And as I understand it, garbage and recycling gets pushed back a day. Monday, Tuesday goes to Tuesday, Wednesday. Any other announcements?
I have circus tickets if anybody needs one. I got 6 of them.
Circus tickets. And besides the ones that you've got, if somebody wanted them, where else could they find them, Jim? They're probably all over town.
No, they're not.
Here at City Hall as well? Just come-
Jim, if I may say something, are you sure this is the right place to bring up circus tickets?
We'll be passing
Well,
out
we've
the...
got kind of a circus going on.
That's exactly what I was getting at.